Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dungeon of Deadly Delights. I'm, of course, Rob DiLauro. And with me, as always, is Miss Holly Interlandi. Holly, what is going on?
Hello. Happy Halloween. I don't have my pumpkins out yet.
Halloween. Yes. It's interesting. I mean, even when you're basically celebrating Halloween every day of your life, I do love this holiday. I love the fact that, there's horror on TV and, it feels like people are just, even people that aren't into Halloween are just, centered, into that spirit. And I don't know.
I just love walking by. I just love like walking my dog and walking by yards with like plastic skeletons in them. It just warms my heart.
Yeah, it's really, it's definitely my favorite holiday. No question, no question. I am a Christmas guy too. I'm a bit of a softie when it comes to Christmas, but so we decided that we were going to talk about horror anthologies this time around for episode 39. We're almost on another pinnacle episode 40, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And just want to take a quick minute here to embarrass Holly because it is technically when this airs, this will be our 1 year anniversary working together on the show. And I mean, really, all I have to say is, I was working with Tommy McLaughlin, of course, the director of Friday 13th Part 6, and I was looking for a replacement, and that's basically all it was. And I didn't know Holly from Adam. I contacted her. She didn't know who I was, and I said I do the show on YouTube. I think
we talked. I think we had talked on Facebook a couple of times about 3 from Hell.
Was it 3 from Hell?
Yeah.
Okay. So I introduced myself to Holly. I said, replacement. And, here we are, a year later. And, it's really funny because a lot of people have actually said to me, when she came onto the werewolf episode, and I love Tommy. Tommy and I are still friends, and, everything he does, I'm just so, happy with the success, whatever he's doing. But you could see the sparks between me and Holly professionally on that show. And I think Tommy, you could see him kind of in the background going like, the fuck's going on here? So it was a great connection from the beginning. And I just realized, I was just like, there's nobody that I'd rather, take this journey with. And, here we are a year later. I mean, happy anniversary, Holly. You're my ride or die, when it comes to this brand. This is our show. Nothing that we do belongs to just me. It is us all across the board. And I could not ask for a better partner in crime than you. So thank you for believing in me and believing in this. And it just continues to get bigger and bigger. And I mean, here's to another year.
Yeah, it's been at the same time. I mean, it doesn't feel like a year, but then at the same time, I don't remember what it was like when I wasn't doing the show. Like it seems like such a natural thing now. So
yeah, it was just kind of like a natural occurrence. It's just like just like any band or something of that nature, creatively, where like you either gel or you don't gel, and me and you gel really fucking well. And I guess the proof's in the pudding when it comes to viewership and whatnot, because our numbers have gone up pretty exponentially when you and I started working together. I just really hope that like everybody out there loves what we do, because I really do love this show, and I love this podcast. I love working with Holly every 2 weeks, and and it makes it even more special that we land on a 1 year anniversary, or every anniversary at this point, on in the Halloween season. That's really cool. I think that it's fitting. We've been talking about terror for an entire year together, and here we are on Halloween. So cheers to you, and thank you, and that's pretty much it. I wish we could celebrate this live, due to distance and of course COVID. We can't, but hopefully one day we'll actually get to do that.
I'll drag you to LA one of these days. It'll happen.
It's a deal.
Eventually.
All right, guys. So enough with the sappiness and the love. Let's get to horror anthologies. Horror anthologies, just like short films, we actually have a short film episode in our catalog. It's just the shorter format is just so unique and different, but so I don't know, it's so effective when you're telling a story.
Well, I think especially with horror, and I've been thinking about this for a long time about what it is about, because you don't really see anthologies of many other genres. I mean, there are science fiction ones sometimes, and there are exceptions, but it's not like you can walk down. Well, I was going to say walk down the aisle. Oh man, I'm old. It's not like you can scroll through Netflix and find romance anthologies. I mean, I'm sure they exist, but it's nowhere near to the level that horror anthologies exist. And I think part of that comes from the tradition of telling scary stories around a campfire, like the sort of round table, like each person gets to tell their story, and sort of that format has sort of evolved into a film thing where each director gets to tell their story, I think.
And the other thing that's really great about anthologies, of course, is the wraparound stories, and a lot of them are really creative and just effective in their own right. And of course, they bring iconic characters to the table a lot of times, and it's always interesting how they actually weave those wraparounds around the story. Sometimes they're more linear than other times, but I love most wraparounds when it comes to anthologies.
Well, yeah, and like you said, they give rise to characters that are almost as iconic as the ones in the films themselves. I mean, Creep Show Creep, Tales from the Crypt, Demon, like these hosts of the horror short film world are just as vivid as the characters they introduce. So
you mean the Crypt Keeper?
Yes, the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah. So in honor of Halloween, of course, like we said, we're going to be talking about horror anthologies. It's there's no political undertones in this one. No, nothing to do with feminism. Nothing to do with anything. I don't think. Maybe some things contextual within, but it's just fun. We're just having a fun time on Halloween. So we hope you guys appreciate that breather. And Holly, what is first in your trick-or-treat bag for horror anthologies?
Well, I mean, since it is the Halloween episode, I thought we should start with a couple of, or at least one, Halloween themed anthology. And the one I wanted to bring up is Tales of Halloween, which is a fairly recent one. It just came out in 2015, although it's 5 years ago now. Oh God. Anyway, it's a really fun, like, Halloween night themed roster of newer, younger directors, like some of my favorites, like Darren Bousman, Lucky
LA
McKee.
Story of anthologies. Like, everybody that lives in LA is part of everybody who's in the horror genre and lives in LA. I'm surprised you're not in the fucking movie, honestly.
Well, no, that's the bizarre thing, is that LA is huge, but it has such a small town mentality. And once you know people in horror, it's like you know them and you do everything with them, and everybody does this stuff at the same time. So Darren Bousman, Lucky McKee, people like Mike Mendez, who did Big Ass Spider, and Neil Marshall, of course, the awesome Neil Marshall, also has a segment in Tales of Halloween. But like you mentioned, a lot of the fun of this particular anthology is seeing the monster horror kids just pop up in whatever segment, like not just directing, but having cameos, and there are so many homages and references to classic horror films. But like, for example,
hey, Landis, what are you doing today? Oh, I was just going to cut my grass. Well, you want to come and do a small part? It's
seriously what it's like. I mean, look at there's a segment called Grim Grinning Ghost where that starts with people sitting in a living room, sitting around on the couch, telling a story, and the people included in the group of people are Lynn Shay, the gypsy, telling the story, Mick Garris, the Phantom, Stuart Gordon, and Barbara Crampton, who is dressed as a witch. Just in that one itty bitty wraparound scene, all these horror legends were sitting around shooting the shit. And that kind of thing is just really, really fun, especially for people like me or horror fans or stuff where it is all a big inside joke, and you're like, oh wow, oh I know him. Like for example, Adam Green, who's a great director, he didn't direct a segment, but he appears in 2 of them, and and you're like, oh hey, it's Adam Green, or some stuff like that.
And if you're a fan of John Carpenter's The Fog, you're going to be really happy about this movie.
Oh yeah, Adrienne Barbeau and her radio announcer voice. But what's also great about Tales of Halloween is that it's totally ridiculously fucking gory, like just in the best possible way. Like I have a tag system where I track movies. I call the tag intestines on film, and I track movies wherein there are intestines featured in one scene or another. It's not real intestines, but
right.
And there are at least 2 segments in Tales of Halloween that could go on my intestines on film tag. It's that brutal. It's that brutal. It's really gruesome.
But the interesting thing about Tales of Halloween is there's really, like we were talking about, linear storytelling, and there really isn't any. It's very kind of punk rock and sporadic. It's just fucking everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and the only wraparound, we were talking about wraparounds, the only wraparound is Adrienne Barbeau, being the radio announcer, which is great. I'm just perfect for her. But it's not really a wraparound story. It's just more of like a connecting, a way to segue seamlessly.
Just
my personal favorite segment
back for something fun. That's all it was.
Yeah. Well, my personal favorite segment from Tales of Halloween is the This Means War segment.
That's mine too. I was just going to say.
2 of my favorite people in the world, Dana Gould and James Duval, throwing down over Halloween decorations in like this brutal, like, it's classic. It's amazing.
It's very real because, it's very real because, James Duval is the Rob Zombie guy, that loves metal.
Rob Zombie era.
I want, like bloody heads on trees and shit like that. And Daniel Gould's like the classic guy. Like
classic Universal monsters, exactly.
Ghost and shit.
Yeah, exactly. So that plays out in the themes of their decorations. And it's just, it's great. It's absolutely hilarious. I mean, there are a bunch of other highlights. Like, Neil Marshall's segment is about a man-eating jack-o'-lantern. How can you not love that? And Darren Bousman's segment is about a kid dressed as a devil who ends up stumbling upon the actual devil's house, and who then takes out his mini devil minion to wreak havoc, and everybody thinks it's actually the kid, but it's not. It's the real devil, and it's just there's just so much fun stuff in this movie.
Yeah, and the one with Barry Bostwick, like being a killer, and he takes a trick-or-treater on this fucking spree.
Yeah. Barry Bostwick, that's the thing I'm talking about. Barry Bostwick, man. And there's so many other cameos, and just fun stuff.
Tiffany Shepis, Alex Esso.
Adrian Curry playing Adrian Curry. Like, why not?
Let's talk about a newer one, because we are big fans of Shudder here. Congratulations to Shudder, by the way. They've got over 1 million subscribers right now. They're just kicking ass left and right. Yeah. And that makes me feel good simply because, as a horror fan, obviously, horror is getting some really serious love, especially for, when it comes to streaming. But there is one that came out called The Mortuary Collection. I wouldn't say it's in my tops, not my top 10, but it's a lot of fun. It really is. And, me and Holly both adore Clancy Brown.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, even if I didn't want to watch the rest of this film, like, all you have to do is say, Clancy Brown, Mortician, boom, I'm there.
Oh, yeah.
Love that guy.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And the thing I loved about it is, I think I talked about this in passing, I'm not sure, but, I was actually friends with Angus Scrimm, Rory.
For those of you who don't know, the famous Undertaker from the Phantasm franchise.
Yeah, and it seemed like Clancy was kind of emulating the Tall Man character a little bit, and
he was definitely playing into it. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a bit of spoilers though that we don't want to get into, that emphasize that. What was your favorite segment in that? For you?
Oh, it had to be just because I'm such a huge fan of both perversion of of societal tropes and gross out gore. The second segment where the frat boy gets pregnant and just all the disgustingness that ensues is just incredible. Like I was actually watching that, so I'm just going, whoa, they just went there. Like, wow, like there's
Well, to give
something
you guys
really
a little bit of an idea, it's a frat guy who is passing out condoms, you know, to basically stress-free love. You know, obviously they're trying to get girls back to the frat, and he has sex with this one girl. He ends up taking off the condom without telling her, and then yeah, hilariousness, and
she turns out to be not your normal girl, but the comeuppance of an obnoxious frat guy like not using protection and getting pregnant by this alien thing is just brilliant.
Oh yeah, and you know, not to get into, you know, the storyline, because you know we don't want to spoil it for anybody, because this is a fairly new you know, it's a fairly new you know, anthology that just came out.
Yeah.
There is an exploding dick in this one.
Yes. Exploding dicks and just lots of explosions in general.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's so gross, and I loved every minute of it.
So you guys can actually catch the Mortuary Collection on Shudder, who still don't sponsor us. I don't know why.
We still have our quota. We mention them every episode, at least once.
Yes, we have. I think you know, for an entire year, we probably mentioned them about 300, 400 fucking times.
Probably.
So let's talk about a couple classics, like huge classics. I mean, what is there to say about the first two Creep shows? I mean, obviously it, you know, created a show for Shudder yet again.
Yeah, which is great, by the way. They did a great job of updating Creep Show. Mm-hmm. Really fun episodes. And of course, using comic books to segue each segment, because the whole idea was to capture the spirit of old pre-code horror comics like EC Comics and, you know, the creepy and eerie stuff. So
yeah, and you're not gonna find two better crafters of an anthology, in my opinion, than George Romero and Stephen King. I mean,
well, I mean, just both masters of their craft, like individually. Mm-hmm. So to have them come together is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and Greg Nicotero just dropped, I think it was maybe a month ago or something, that there is actually like a Creep Show animated Halloween special or something coming.
Yeah, there's going to be a Creep Show Halloween special. I think they're putting it out on Halloween, or maybe the day before Halloween.
I think so, and it's actually it's Joey King and Kiefer Sutherland, which is pretty fantastic.
I didn't know Kiefer Sutherland. That's fantastic. I love it. Mm-hmm. So cool. I'm a huge Creep Show fan.
So what do you have to say about the original Creep Show? Because that's numero uno for me.
Well, yeah, I mean, like just the cast alone is like it's just amazing, and it's one of those. I feel like it's one of those films that even if you haven't seen it in a long time, there are still like iconic images, like screen moments that you still remember. You know, whether it's Ted Danson's head or you know, or like Stephen King playing the backwoods dude and is like, you know, and the plants creeping, like I feel like there are those moments that almost as if it were filmed like a comic book with like the splash page, and you turn it and you get that image. Yeah. And because for me, I mean, I haven't seen the original Creep Show in a really long time. Gosh, it's been years since I watched it, but I still remember those single images just vividly, because they're just burned into you, you know, and that's really, I don't know, that's what I think of when I think of the original.
Just from the beginning, I mean, you know, first you got Little Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, being whacked in the face with a comic book by Tom Atkins. You little son of a bitch! I told you not to read this trash. It wasn't like that. You know, like the wraparound was fucking excellent, and you know, of course, that was the first time where we saw the, you know, just a creep in general. And you know, I just watched it recently, and that creep design is still super effective. It's crazy how effective it is.
Yeah.
And also, just everything that Tom Savini and his crew did for that movie. I mean, honestly, for me, like, when it comes to all of Savini's work, like I know he did all the slasher gags of Friday 13th and stuff like that, but that's probably head and shoulders above the rest for me when it comes to his work. Do you have a favorite segment from Creepshow? I know it's been a while for you.
I mean, I've always I've always been of the opinion that there need to be more killer plant movies.
Mm-hmm.
So that segment with I don't remember the title of it.
Jordy Verrill.
Which one?
Jordy Verrill, Stephen King.
Yeah. Well, the scheme with the crashing the meteor and the plant stuff. I've always been more like, I tried to make a list of killer plant movies once, and there weren't nearly enough.
Well, the thing is about
I think it's an untapped resource.
Well, I think the thing about that, I think a lot of people have stated, before in the past that Stephen King can't act, and I absolutely disagree.
I do. He's okay. Well, even if you want to say he's not a dramatic actor, he was perfect in that role.
He really was,
because he knew exactly what to do to yeah. Oh, it was perfect.
Yeah, it was like he was just he was like a Looney Tunes character. Obviously like
exactly.
There's a little bit it was a bit sympathetic, and the other thing about that is as goofy as it was, and he's like, "Whoa, meteor shit," and all that stuff. You're never expecting that ending, where he just turns into basically like some sort of ficus human and blows his fucking head off, like, and you're like, holy shit, like that just really.
And what's funny is that the very first episode of Shudder's Creepshow was sort of a nod to that segment. I don't know if you remember, but the plant taking over when I watched that, I was like, oh, they're doing this so well.
Yeah. I think my favorite segment though my favorite one is probably just from an acting standpoint, and just like an atmospheric standpoint. I love the one with the roaches. That's that's amazing. But I think,
apparently the roaches were super expensive. They're like the most expensive special effect in the whole movie.
Yeah, and there was a story supposedly where they let the roaches loose for that one scene, and they were incorporating like exotic cockroaches with actual cockroaches, and like some of them actually got out into the world, and there's probably like breeds of cockroaches that are ancestors to the fucking Creepshow fucking cockroaches.
Killer tropical cockroaches. Thank you.
My great grandfather was famous. He was in fucking Creepshow. No, but it's probably Father's Day. That's my favorite, I think.
Yeah.
Just really super effective, and just her acting. She's just sitting there, talking to her father, his tombstone, and she's like, "You called me a bitch." She goes, "I fixed it all." Chair turned over. I fucking love her acting. Just so
also that's a classic DC Comics ending too.
Oh yeah, where's my cake, Cordelia? Which was actually John Amplas from Day of the Dead and Martin. He was in that suit. He was in the Grantham suit.
Oh, fantastic! I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the king for me. No pun intended. Is Creepshow, and I think it always will be. The next one I want to talk about is, it's interesting how this thing worked out, because we mentioned in our short film episode Michael Dougherty. He's a film student at the time. He does this little animated short called Season's Greetings. Gets connected, and starts to get the opportunity to build this feature version of this animated film. And Season Greetings, of course, becomes Trick or Treat. Now, what's interesting about this is, it never got a real release. It just kind of sat in a dank grave for a while. Like nobody really knew what this thing was. Nobody had ever seen a stitch of this thing, maybe aside from a trailer or something like that.
It
And
was
then
sort of the ultimate cult movie in that way.
and when it comes out on DVD, there's already a huge loyal army of fans that are, just rabid about this film when it comes out, because of the imagery and everything. Like, it just caught everybody's attention without even seeing it. And, then the merchandising like skyrocketed. Like even now, like, to get Trick or Treat merchandise, like from the real film, you're paying a pretty penny. I can tell you that, as a collector for a fact. There's a couple Trick or Treat things in my collection that I,
Well, I mean, it's sort of the ultimate like cult film trajectory. Like, nobody knew anything about it. It did nothing. There was no hype. It did nothing. And then now it's this like totally revered, like almost legendary,
yeah,
Halloween picture.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
And Sam is an icon.
Oh, like, yeah, like, up there with like, like Freddy and Jason and, Chucky and all of them.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Comfortably, placed in, shit, he might even be on the on the Rushmore of horror. I don't know. But a lot of people love Sam. Honestly, there's really not a lot to talk about when it comes to this film. I think a lot of people have seen it. I would hope. But we've obviously, Holly and I met on our werewolf episode, and a lot of people don't talk about that werewolf scene in Trick or Treat. It is phenomenal, and such an effective looking werewolf design when it comes to whatever it was, the puppetry or whatever they were using. Oh God, it was so good. So good.
Yeah.
It just all works so well. And, Marilyn Manson playing the whole time. Oh, it's such a good scene. The one scene that I do want to mention, though, when it comes to Trick or Treat, obviously I was a fan of Trick or Treat before I became a father. And my son is autistic. And I never, for years, like I think it was a couple years, I haven't watched it for a while. And I ended up watching it on Fear Fest on AMC recently. And as a father, now being a father, because it never really affected me at all, when I watched it before, you know what I mean? But as a father of a special needs child, that bus scene tore me the fuck apart. Because those kids on that bus are special needs kids.
Well, I mean, the bus scene is really, really intense, even for those of us who aren't parents. At least I remember it was for me. And it's really a gut puncher.
But just the fact that they were autistic, they had special needs. You know what I mean? And they've been probably, like a more violent set, because like kids do tend to get violent when they have autism and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that, as a negative. My son has, bouts where he really rages and stuff. It just comes with the territory. But that really fucking affected me. You know what I mean? As a parent. Because just the whole story of, these parents didn't want these kids. They were tired. And I get, and that really like cuts to my core, because as a parent of an autistic child, like I get it. I'm tired.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes he never goes back to sleep. You know what I mean? And then I just have to go about my day. I get it. You know what I mean? I feel it. I feel how parents with special needs kids feel. I felt that fucking scene. It was hardcore. It tore me to shreds. That parents would get to that point where they're just like, you know what? They're a fucking embarrassment. We don't want them around us. You know what I mean? We don't have to want to explain it to our friends anymore. So we're just going to hire this fucking bus driver to drop them off a fucking ravine. Whew. Intense.
I mean, I thought it had a lot of the same sort of like personal guilt notes as the marriage segment from Mortuary Collection.
Yeah.
wherein the husband marries his wife, and she falls basically catatomically ill, and she doesn't do anything. She doesn't talk. She doesn't move. She just sits there, and he has to take care of her every need, and he again is tired. He's exhausted. He wants to be done with it. So I think it's sort of a it's the same notes there, which is it's sort of like it's like a horrible thing to feel, but at the same time you're like, wow, I get it. Does that make me a monster?
But here's the great thing, because, you know, like Michael, you know, these are all things that I never really, like, not that I didn't figure them out, they just weren't there. You know what I mean? Like there was a veil there as a viewer, and, you know, like I wasn't experiencing it as a parent, you know, that's in a different situation that can actually understand all these, you know, different contexts and stuff. But this young girl who is obviously herself, you know, like special needs in some way, she gets over on the kids that, you know what I mean? Like she's the fucking victor, and it just makes it all better. You know what I mean? It does. It really does. Because, you know, these fucking pieces of shit kids were going to take a special needs girl and terrify her, you know, practically to death. You pricks deserve what you got down in that fucking well, man. You deserved it. Fuck you, kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing about Trick or Treat. I think that's the reason why it went into development hell for so long, is that so many children die in this movie.
It's true. It's true. I mean, there is no, just
Yeah.
knocking off the kids. I mean, if this were like, obviously, I guess some people have the same thing with dead kids in movies as I have with dead dogs. If this were a movie with dead dogs, I wouldn't be able to watch it. So I'm sure there are people who can't watch it because it's all the dead kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, I mean, there's probably a couple things where people were just like, yeah, this is never gonna fucking see the light of day, man. um, but it's a masterpiece of an anthology for sure. It absolutely is, and it deserves the, you know, the hugely iconic status. What's next on your list, Holly?
Well, I think we'd be remiss to not talk about another classic, classic of classics. That is Trilogy of Terror.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because not only is Karen Black an icon, and she's brilliant in every segment. I feel like the little Zuni fetish doll is also a horror icon, and of course, you know, each story, you know, being based on being written by the great Richard Matheson, and one of them adapted by William F. Nolan. I mean, that whole classic science fiction horror Twilight Zone crowd, putting out this great this anthology that sort of escalates. Like it sort of begins like sort of innocently, and it's like, oh, okay, this teacher's being taken advantage of, and blah blah blah, and then you learn what's really going on, and then the second segment is a little bit more edgy, and the performance by Karen Black is a little bit more spicy, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And then you get to the final segment, Amelia, with the little fetish doll, and it's just, I mean, it's a scary doll to look at, for one thing. The design of the doll is brilliant, but also it's just, I think there's something about like this, like the audio they dubbed over the little guy, like it's so good. I feel like it inspired everything from Child's Play to Critters. Like just that, having that little itty bitty thing that, like, you know, that cuts at your ankles, and the best part where she shuts him up in the suitcase and he's got the knife and he's like, like the whole segment. Although for me, actually, it's entertaining, but for me, the creepiest part is actually the very end, where Amelia, you know, kneels down on the carpet with a massive butcher knife and starts stabbing into the floor, and then she smiles, and you see the Zuni doll's sharp teeth, and then you're like, whoa, and that's the stuff of you know, of a classic.
What's next on your list?
Well, let's go overseas a little bit. Mm-hmm. At least with the animation, and adult animation, which I am a huge fan of. I think is really underutilized, and this particular anthology just nails nails a different kind of animation in every segment. And that's the Extraordinary Tales anthology that adapts Edgar Allan Poe short stories. Follow the House of Usher, Telltale Heart, Facts in the Case of Valdemar, The Pit and the Pendulum, and The Mask of the Red Death. Excuse me. And these, although those stories are Poe's, all the animation is done by Spanish animators, Spanish and French. It's a European anthology, but they also just give you a knockout narrative cast. For each segment, you know, they've actually gone back into the archives of Christopher Lee and Bela Lugosi's recordings. So Christopher Lee is the narrator for Follow the House of Usher, and Bela Lugosi is the narrator for Telltale Heart. And they, you know, they had these recordings existed, and so they basically they animated the story to go along with these recordings, which is just so cool to me. And then we've got Julian Sands, as we were talking about, from Moxie Helena, doing the narration for the Facts of M. Valdemar, and even Guillermo del Toro joins in the fun and does the narration for Pit and the Pendulum, and Roger Corman does Mask of the Red Death. So it's an all-star lineup as far as voice acting and narration, and the animation is just beautiful. Like it's all connected by this crow flying around in a graveyard, the Raven, you know, obviously good Poe reference. But each segment has a distinct style that really sets it apart from all the others. Like for example, the M. Valdemar segment is animated very much like a comic book page. A lot of the images are still, while the dialogue bubbles and everything it goes above them while Julian Sands reads the narration on top of it. So it's almost like a motion comic. The Telltale Heart one is in black and white, you know, really simple. The Pit and the Pendulum segment, I think, was my favorite, not just because of Guillermo and narrating, but it's the method of animation they used was sort of a halfway between 3D and 2D in a way that just made it really unsettling. And the whole thing is, I mean, the story is pretty terrifying in general, but the way they adapt it is great. And then of course, Mask of the Red Death. It sort of flashes across the screen in these saturated colors, the saturated colors of each room. I'm not sure if you've read any of the stories, but it's this one is it's really gorgeous. It's high art. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. Like, Edgar Allan Poe is one of the most famously adapted authors ever. I mean, everybody, like Vincent Price himself was in a bunch of different Poe movies and stuff. So for this to come out and like leave the kind of mark that it does, just nails each story so well. I was really impressed with this anthology, and it's just called Extraordinary Tales, and they're all Edgar Allan Poe stories, and it's definitely worth a look. I was really impressed with it.
What do you mean? Did I ever read Edgar Allan Poe?
No. I mean, I didn't know if you'd read like all the stories.
Well, saddle up the salads, Ma. I got to get me an education. You asshole. And some people may say, well, heavy metal's not horror. Bullshit.
Yeah, bullshit.
There's quite a few very intense horror things within heavy metal. And of course, you know, if you're not familiar, heavy metal is a magazine that's been circulating for decades. You know, when it comes to really, you know, mature animation, you know, blood, breast, and beasts, you know, just like, you know, Roger Corman's mantra. And before Holly starts, you know, because this is, you know, technically her choice, I just want to say that when I was a kid, I can't remember what it was on. It might have been HBO. This is, like I used to sneak late at night and watch shit on HBO all the time. So it could have very well been HBO, I'm sure. Until like, somehow I got it on VHS because, like, just like my mom didn't check, nutritional facts on the back of cereal boxes and shit. She also didn't do it when it came to certain VHSs and stuff. So I was fat and I was watching R-rated cartoons. So, but yeah.
Heavy Metal is my midnight movie.
That orb scared the fuck out of me when I was a kid.
Which segment?
The Lochnar orb.
Oh yeah, the Lochnar, yeah.
Yeah, just the way that that orchestra is like like playing, and like you got people going whoa, and he's saying like all this horrible stuff to this little girl, like I am destruction, I am.
See how I destroy people's lives. And Heavy Metal is my midnight movie. Everybody has that one movie, or it's like, it's late at night and everybody's drunk or high or whatever. It's just like, let's put Kiss on. Heavy Metal is that movie for me every time. There's just something so charming about it, even amongst all the the accusations of oh, it's misogynist with too many big boobs and blah blah blah, and I'm just like, dude, you gotta let it go. You gotta just sit back and let it do what it does and entertain the crap out of you. And as we were talking about how it is, I mean, it's treated as a science fiction anthology, which it is for the large part. But there are like in the Den segment, for example, which is based on comics by Richard Corbin and stars John Candy in the voice role of the main actor. The whole ritual with
John Candy's voice coming out of a giant black man is still one of the funniest ever.
Oh, big. Oh, it's so good. And but like I was saying, in that particular segment, the whole robed cultists are worshiping a god called Urutek, which is Cthulhu spelled backwards, which of course is Lovecraftian. So that's horror right there. And then of course the World War II zombie segment is super, super creepy. I mean, man, it's especially because it's not explained, and beyond like the Lochnar phenomenon, which is part of what I like about that sort of wraparound story, is that the Lochnar can be that unexplained thing that fucks something up and makes it crazy and scary. And the last segment, of course, the Tarna episode, Tarna, with the soldiers who get, the volcano explodes with Lochnar green slime, and they turn into green monster zombies, and so yeah, it's chock full of monstrous stuff as well as science fiction stuff.
Oh yeah. The next anthology on my list is I think it's another Bloody Disgusting production, and Brad Miska of Bloody Disgusting just got the best, not even just directors that were great for it, but people that he knew and he just felt comfortable with working with. And again, it's the usual suspects, David Bruckner, Radio Silence, and yep. Kudos to the fucking sequel, because there's a lot of great shit in that too.
Oh, I almost like the sequel more. I love VHS 2.
Wow, that's you know what? I think I like this one better because there's one segment that I just adore.
Which one?
Okay, so of course we're talking about VHS, and it was just an interesting take because, again, it just took something that, got really, as cheesy as found footage, and it just did it in a unique way, where, it just basically this wraparound of these criminals that, do a job, and there's this VHS tape involved. So they go in this house, there's this, I think it's like a dead body, like laying on the couch, and they all watch this VHS tape, and every time somebody watches it, they disappear. But my favorite segment in that particular in VHS out of all of it, and like I said, there's a lot of stuff I love from VHS too. But unfortunately, due to time, can't really talk about all of it.
Well, and also the thing with the VHS movies, I think we need to remember is that found footage had been like a thing, and everybody was sort of sick of it. Everyone was like, okay, found footage is over. Let's not do that anymore. Forget it, forget it, forget it. Because that was the Blair Witch kind of wave. And so everybody sort of got over it. And then VHS came out in like what? It was like 2012 or 2011. And it just sort of did it in a new enough way that all of a sudden it was, everyone loved it again.
Yeah.
I feel like VHS was like the start of a new found footage era, so to speak.
Okay. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like I think there's definitely the one that was just like, kind of like the, like we're here, get used to it, anthem. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Anthologies are here to stay, and they're not just for the older crowd of horror fans anymore. Like, we're making shit for like modern audiences. Something more edgy, something a different spin on it. Something like you said, just something more modern, I think. But my favorite segment, and this is why I'm talking about the original VHS, is the one with Hannah Fierman, where she ends up in a motel room with these three guys, and they're basically trying to make a porn, with any woman that's, passed out. And, that whole segment works so well, obviously, that they, ended up making a feature film.
Did they really?
Yeah.
What'd they call it? What was the feature film?
I think it was called Siren or something. I'm not.
That's unfortunate.
But anyway, yeah. So Hannah Fierman, ends up in this motel room with these guys, and the one guy doesn't want to do this, sick act with his friends, and he's just like, you guys are, fucked up. I don't know why, like I don't want anything to do with this. And these guys are so horned up that like all the signs are there, like she literally has scales on her feet, and nobody notices, and it just, like the puzzle box just opens, more and more when it comes to their inevitable deaths. You know what I mean? Yeah. But she does like this one particular guy, and she keeps saying, "I like you." That's all. That's it. I like you. It's her only line in the entire movie, and it's so intense. Just the way she, she drops it, and of course, where they put in the, digital effects that kind of distort her face and stuff, and certain moments and whatnot.
I love that segment you brought up, because that's the most memorable for me from the first one as well.
For sure, absolutely. And basically, after she just eviscerates these guys, she finds Clint outside. She gives him fellatio, and then he basically recoils in terror, and she just stands in a corner and just fucking cries. You know what I mean? Like, you offended me. You know what I mean? Like, I like you, dude. Like, I'll give you, give you my all, I'll give you my everything. And then
and just that moment when he's like terrified, like sitting out in the stairwell, and she's just like crawling towards him, and they do that weird effect with her face. Like, I just love that part so much.
So then she just, wraps him up in her wings and just flies off with him. And
flies off like a dragon. Mm-hmm. And that's also great, because all you see is, he's still filming, so you just see some leathery wings, and you hear like air rushing by, and you're like, okay, he's been kidnapped by a flying harpy.
Yeah, and just her acting in that, like if you can drop one line like that, and repeatedly through an entire segment, and make it just as engaging as the first time you said that phrase.
Yeah,
she was killing it, in that performance. What's next on your list?
Well, this is actually another recent one that I just watched. It's 2018, actually, and I really enjoyed this, because there are a lot of horror anthologies nowadays that have to sort of cater to the tongue-in-cheek crowd, and I completely appreciate that, like, because there are horror tropes and horror parodies and horror homages, and so many horror anthologies exist within that space where they're basically being a meta humorous commentary on horror itself. But what I appreciated about The Field Guide to Evil, which is an international anthology that you can watch on Hulu right now, is that the segments are, not only is it international, each segment is directed by a different director from a different country, but the segments are all based on folklore. They're all based on like ancient tales of like demons or cryptids or stuff that like stories that these people told in their country like from a long time ago, and because of that, it's already got this like sort of ancient heavy feel to it. Mm-hmm. Then there's a great Greek segment about goblins coming up from the land below, and this sort of this band of revelers who find a goblin who has come up from the below, and they torture him and drink his blood and all this stuff, and it's just that one's really cool, and it involves some really great practical effects for the goblin. It's just it's a really cool little exercise, and like I said, some of the segments, like, they don't end in a cliche horror movie way. Like, there's not a twist or anything. They just sort of stop, because that's kind of how a lot of like mythology is. Like, mythology doesn't have a twist, like it doesn't need that extra little haha thing. It's just the story is what it is. And so that's what I appreciate a lot about this particular anthology too, is that it's just really gothic and straightforward and full of beautiful imagery. So it's a really cool one, I thought. I really liked it.
Cool. I'm going to go back to another classic that allegedly, I guess in an interview before in the past, like Tom Savini had said this was supposed to be Creepshow 3. And I don't think there's any truth to that. I guess, when it comes to tone and stuff, that's what he was talking about. That's where they wanted to go with it and stuff. And, I guess, because technically King and Romero were sort of involved in this, because if you guys aren't familiar, again, horror television episode from way back, go to the Wayback Machine and check that out too. But of course, George Romero had his own anthology show called Tales from the Dark Side, and they ended up making Tales from the Dark Side the movie, which was pretty short considering most anthologies. It was basically like it was a wraparound with 3 stories within, and they were stories, you know what I mean? Like, so basically Tales from the Dark Side is it's a young newspaper boy played by one of the Lawrence brothers. I can't remember which one. And Debbie Harry is a suburban witch. Blondie, if for you guys that aren't familiar. Go
again. You think I don't know who Debbie Harry is? I'm accusing you of not having read Deathly Half.
No, I'm talking to our younger audience members. If you guys don't.
Okay, that's fine. That's acceptable.
Go do your music homework. So anyway, Debbie Harry plays a suburban witch, and she's got him caged up in like literally this medieval looking like rusty cage, and he's just like, and she's getting ready to cook him, and she, he's just like, no, wait, I've got a story. So he starts telling her these stories to, sway her from, her mission of eating him. And there's a story with, and again, like, just like every other anthology, I mean, we can't even name all the great actors that are in these things. Because the first is, it's got Steve Buscemi and Christian Slater, a very young Julianne Moore at that point. And, basically, like, they cheat Steve Buscemi, they're college students, they cheat him out of a scholarship, and he resurrects a mummy and, like, to kill them. And Christian Slater, like, basically, like, ties him to a chair, and he like once, like he burns all this, like, basically the, the scroll of the dead, and, like, but he can't kill Steve Buscemi. He can't do it, So, Steve Buscemi, like, resurrects the people that the mummy killed, and they end up knocking on Christian Slater's door, and, it's a whole thing. And then there's a second segment where David Johansen is a hitman, and he's hired to kill a cat. That's the segment. And, he's running around this old man's house. This guy hires him, if you guys are fans of Christmas Vacation, it's actually Uncle Lewis. You couldn't hear a dump truck driving through a nitroglycerin plant. He hires David Johansen to kill this cat. And it's just like the cat, like fucking just evading this guy, like over and over and over again. And then, scratch him in the face. And, and then there's a really cool nod to the original Creepshow, because you see David Johansen's body on the ground, and then all of a sudden, like, his stomach starts bubbling and stuff, and this black cat comes shooting out of his throat. Like, it's
amazing.
It's pretty amazing. But the one that I love is, ironically enough, it's called The Love Vow. Holly had mentioned this. It was another series of shorts called Quiet On, and there's a snow that was referenced in that particular film. It's a Japanese mythological demon.
Japanese legend of the Snow Woman. Yuka Onna.
So basically, it's an artist, and like he's down on his luck, and his paintings aren't selling, and like he goes to meet up with his agent, and the guy basically tells him that your stuff's just not working. It's not it's not selling. So he ends up on this drinking binge, ends up in this alley, and he sees one of his friends like shooting at something, and this the guy gets fucking decapitated, like basically in front of him. And this huge fucking awesome looking gargoyle comes up to him and scrawls in his chest like an X, and he says, "Cross your heart," and just goes away, flies away. And he ends up going, running from the thing, ends up in another alley, and sees a beautiful woman played by Ray Don Chong. And she basically gives him this bullshit story, like I was waiting for a taxi or something like that. And she's, he basically says, like, well, why don't you come to my apartment, use my phone, call the cops or whatever. They start having this, tryst together. They're having like, really hot sex, and they end up getting married. And they have children together. And, like this whole time, he has not said anything about this, about this encounter with this, gargoyle. And he tells her. And he breaks the vow, because even though it was her, he promised that he was never going to tell anybody. Yeah. So, she starts to transform, and it's a really great fucking scene. And then the kids start transforming, and, like she takes a huge chunk out of his neck, and there's like, great blood spray. And then, like the end of the story pretty much, like is the gargoyle mother and her children, like just, cast in stone, basically, like looking down at, the body of the man that she loved. And she really did love him. She just had to kill him because he promised that he wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah. That's always the doozy of the Yuka Onna story.
So good. It's so good. But Tales from the Dark Side, and again, it's another cult classic that's worth a visit if you haven't. You know what? I've never ventured into the series Tales from the Dark Side for quite a while. There was some really good stuff in that show too. I know people, like when they talk about anthologies, they talk about Tales from the Crypt and the Twilight Zone and all this stuff. But Tales from the Dark Side's got some really solid shit in it, I think. We're going to end off this evening's festivities, our Fear festivities, with an anthology that is, definitely is more modern. I think it just came out in 2019. And it, was making the rounds of festivals and stuff, and now is, again, it's available on Shudder. And it's you know, you know, we had just mentioned Masters of Horror. It's, you know, produced and crafted, you know, by Mick Garris. You know, and he got some friends together and he made a great anthology that I think will stand the test of time, called Nightmare Cinema. And you know, as we tend to do, which is, you know, obviously the situation with our podcast. This is a further reading section, so if you guys love Nightmare Cinema or you're a fan of Mick Garris, please join us for episode 6 right after this airs, for the Dungeon of Deadly Delights podcast, where we are actually talking to the master of horror himself, even though he would never admit it, Mr. Mick Garris.
He's too modest that way.
He's very modest. But what do you have to say about Nightmare Cinema?
Oh, I just loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I first went in to watch it, I was almost nervous because have you ever gone to watch something that you are so
where you love the person that does it, but you're just like, God, I hope this isn't crap.
Or you're so the target audience for it that you almost don't even trust your own opinion. Mm-hmm. Like, if there's a target audience for this, I'm the goddamn bullseye. Mm-hmm. Like, I think Mick Garris was talking about how it's the spiritual successor to Masters of Horror, which was one of my favorite things of all time. And I was lucky enough to see a review copy of this, and I was just like, oh, I can't begin to describe how excited I was. And what I appreciate the most about it, I think, is that it's so well-rounded as anthologies go. Like, it covers a myriad of different tones, techniques. It opens with this crazy, like, slasher parody thing called The Thing in the Woods, which involves, again, intestines on film. And then, like, this bizarre, like, sci-fi twist. And there's a
would have worked phenomenally for a feature film. That's what I
right?
actually said to Mick Garris in the podcast. You know, because that idea, you know, you're seeing all these, you know, classic tropes and stuff, and then he, you know, like, he takes the welder's mask off and he's just like, I'm your friend. Like, you know, and you're thinking it's just some guy that's, like, in love with this girl, and then it turns out, like, you know,
you're like, oh no, these guys are all infected with alien spiders.
Yeah, kill you guys. Like, you know, I can't let you into the city. You know what I mean? Like, you guys are infected with these fucking alien spiders and shit, and that was such a good fucking twist.
And apparently, it was all, the whole idea was the director's Alejandro Brugués, who directed One of the Dead, yeah, and was picked by Mick to be part of this anthology, and he just knocked it out of the park. Like, I love the twist, because just when you think you know what to expect with this opening segment, you're like, okay, spider cam, like, what? It's great.
What was your favorite segment, though, out of everything, though?
I mean, at first I was like, well, it's a sort of a toss-up between the awesomely, like, 80s heavy metal satanic send-up that is Mashit, that Rita Kitamura did, and David Slade's This Way to Egress piece. Yes. Just because David Slade's segment just sits in the middle of just this craziness, and it's this really understated black and white piece that uses, like, sort of subdued, like, makeup and masks and mud and dirtiness and just really basic creepy stuff, like phone signals and the sound of, like, a plunger plunging, yeah, you know, a sink, and just a lot of those basic sounds. To me, it's
almost like everybody's just like, you know, this is going to be great. We're going to emulate John Landis. We're going to emulate, you know, like, oh, we got Joe Dante doing a, you know, cosmetic surgery thing, and it's going to be fucking fun. And then David Slade was just like, no, I think I'm going to mirror David Lynch.
I think I'm going to do some artsy fartsy shit.
David Cronenberg and, you know, Ingmar Bergman. You know what I mean? Like, that dude was really making art within.
Well, yeah. Well, but what I think makes it the highlight for me is that it's the segment that feels most like a nightmare. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the kind of thing that you might dream about, where where nothing makes sense.
And you don't know what the fuck is going on, even at the end, but you still love it, and you're just like,
yeah,
wow, really well done.
and this main character, this woman who, you know, she's seen things change, and you know, and it's she doesn't understand. She thinks she's going crazy.
Hill House too, by the way.
Sorry.
He was also fantastic in The Haunting of Hill House too, by the way. She played one of the sisters.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, the whole segment, and then towards the end, you sort of get an idea like that she's dropped down from some upper level and she's in some kind of like underground weird hell purgatory place, but you're never quite sure. And I think that's what makes it so cool, and what makes it feel like a nightmare. You sort of wake up and you're like, what just happened? So I love that segment.
Well, Joe Dante has a good one too.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see Joe, you know, again, you know, behind the camera, obviously. You know, Mick has that charm where, you know, he just gets his friends to do things that they normally, you know, have, you know, probably hung up at a certain point. You know what I mean? It's like trying on a new pair of shoes, you know, or something. You know what I mean? Like you got this legend just doing this anthology again. And, you know, Joe Dante's, you know, was pretty simple. It was just this beautiful woman who, you know, kind of has this Dr. Doom scar, basically. You know what I mean? And it just, you know, like haunts her, and she's getting ready to get married, and she's just like, I want to get it fixed. And, you know, the husband kind of convinces her that, you know, that's the right thing to do. And she's talking to, you know, her doctor, Richard Chamberlain, and, you know, everything sounds good. He's, you know, very, you know, kind, and says like, oh, this is what we're going to do. We're just going to go here and here and here and blah, blah, blah. Handsome fucking man, by the way, Richard Chamberlain. Jesus Christ. Like,
yeah, that's a great preview performance from him.
Oh yeah, for sure. So she, you know, ends up in bandages. They tell her that she can't take them off, and she can't make any phone calls. You know, and you know, so basically, like, it just gets really sinister really quick. And, you know, like, obviously there's something really, you know, fucked up about this, you know, particular place or whatever. But it turns out that her husband wanted her to deform her because her mother looks like a plastic Muppet. It has like she's probably had like 500 plastic surgeries. She looks like that one Muppet with the blonde hair and the Dr. Teeth and the Electric Band.
Oh, totally. She totally looks just like that. Janice, is that her name? Janet? Absolutely.
So let's talk about Masheet.
Masheet. Flying Limbs, man. Great send-up of 70s satanic movies, really. Like...
Well, it was nice to see a priest actually, you know, fucking a woman, not touching kids.
Well, I think that's what you're supposed to think is the reason that Masheet showed up and started infecting the whole seminary is because the priest was molesting the kids too.
I never got that. Is that?
Well, the dead kid who had fallen off the top of the building was possessed by Masheet and came back into the room after, you know, the priest and the nun were getting it on, and the child, the demon inside the child was saying things like, you know, I missed you, I missed the time we spent together, the things we did.
Oh fuck! You know what? I never caught that. I never caught that.
Yeah, and so you sort of feel like the demon is there to punish everybody.
Well, yeah, that would make sense that he would actually be in the Rialto Theater. That's one thing we never mentioned. You know, that's the fucking elephant in the room that we talk about, you know, further in the podcast. But you know, you're used to the creep, you're used to the bony crypt keeper, and now you got this huge, muscular Frankenstein's monster known as Mickey Rourke playing a character called the Projectionist, and it's
he looks like an ex-wrestler.
It's pretty fucking great.
Yeah.
It actually works really well.
Yeah,
so these people just, you know, wander into this, you know, theater, you know, and that's how their, you know, stories kind of come into play. And that's a cool wraparound too, because you know, you don't necessarily know if these are actually like, you know, movies that they're in, or they're actually like seeing something that's going to eventually happen to them. I think that's kind of the point. Like,
yeah,
you know,
for sure.
But yeah, you know, to Masheet's credit, if you guys are fans of old classic bloody disgusting Peter Jackson, this is I'll put this on record as one of the coolest, like just blood splattery scenes in
Well, what I love about it is that like this priest like arms himself with like a sword from one of the icons, and at first he and the nun are like just trying to like knock the demonic kids out, or just like push them away or whatever, and then by the end of it they're just like fuck it, they're just chopping their heads off and chopping their limbs off, and there's blood flying everywhere.
Everywhere, and these are children, by the way. These are fucking children. So the last segment is obviously Mick Garris's, and it's called Dead. And he had mentioned that it was it was supposed to be a feature film, and it kind of went into like a development hell situation. He never got it done. So he wanted to condense it and just, make it, just a small nugget of a really wild story. It actually worked really well, I thought.
Yeah, well, it's sort of an emotional roller coaster too. Like I feel like it has more of an emotional center than any of the other segments. Like it sort of has characters that you actually care about in a weird way. Yeah.
So it's this young kid, and he's a piano prodigy, and his parents go to see him at a concert, and they never mention why, but this guy's in their fucking car. And he keeps saying, "Don't look at me, kid. Don't look at me." And he fucking, like the father, like, tries to fend for his family, and he gets, his brains blown out, and then you don't necessarily know. His mother gets shot, but you don't really know, what the whole thing is with her. Is she dead? Is she alive? He doesn't, the son doesn't even know. So he ends up in a hospital, and, I would say kind of like in like Sixth Sense fashion, he just keeps seeing dead people.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the people he ends up seeing, again, you don't know whether she's dead or not, is, his mother, played by Annabeth Gish. So, all this weird shit's happening to this kid, and he doesn't quite know what's going on. And then this guy comes to visit him in the hospital to try to kill him.
Unfinished business.
Yeah, unfinished business. And I think I mentioned on the podcast, Mick, it really kind of has sort of, he does have, in passing, a lot of connection with Spielberg and stuff. It definitely has a Spielberg polish to it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So
sort
it's
of like an AI polish.
Gore, but there's some gore in it, and it just works really effectively. Mick is he's just a different storyteller altogether. I think the reason why him and King work so well, and Mick is, he's a writer too, and I think he's got a lot of deep connection with Stephen King when it comes to his skills and what he brings to the table. He's just a unique creator, and you can definitely see it on the screen when you watch Dead, for sure.
Yeah, well, and it's got the most literary feel too, out of all the segments. Whereas,
absolutely.
Like you look at something like David Slade's segment, it's very, very visual, very visual. But then Mick's segment is it feels like you're reading something almost. Like it feels like you could be reading a Stephen King story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even dare even call this fucking thing a cult classic. I think it is, it is Ace's #1 numero uno blockbuster to a lot of fucking people.
Kudos to Mike Doherty. He's brilliant.
Yeah. And, another one that I want to bring up really fast, and, a lot of people would, probably dispute me or whatever, but it is already wrecked my soul quite a few times, like the racial situations within. But even though like we're following the same characters every week, I would call Lovecraft Country an anthology to many degrees.
Okay.
It does veer to, into horror, into sci-fi, and all these different aspects of it. But it's such a wonderful fucking show. And if that doesn't win every single award, if we have, if Emmys exist, there's no justice in this world.
Well, horror anthologies and TV shows and everything are just booming on streaming services right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Hulu just released the Monsterland anthology, and Shudder's doing Shudder and Creepshow, and they did new episodes of Channel Zero. I mean, it's just it's a thing. I think people are realizing that there's absolutely an audience for that stuff.
Oh, for sure. So that's our episode, guys. Horror anthologies. We went through a lot of them. And you know, if you guys haven't seen them, you know, like, you know, get your, you know, you know, a small group together, wear a mask or whatever if you need to, you know, make some popcorn and sit down and watch some of these things, because they really are, you know, they're what the doctor orders, especially when it comes to Halloween. Anthologies are,
Bite-sized terror, little candy nuggets.
that's for sure, definitely. So you know, join us, you know, next time when we have our next topic. Again, Holly, you know, 1 year, man. Let's keep it going. I love working with you. I'm not
I feel
gonna.
like I need to step up my background game. I just can't compete with you, with your pumpkins and your action figures and your thriller poster. And I mean, it like I don't know. I guess I could put my massive collection of like old monster paperbacks next to me, but I don't know. I'll think of something. I'll think of something.
So again, that's it for us, guys. Happy Halloween. Thank you again for all the love and support. Please go to the Dungeon of Deadly Delights podcast and hear our interview with Mick Garris. And we'll scare you later. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Cheers.